Okay, Rabbi Isai, let's get started. Chazaras Hashatz. Gishmak, let's do it. Okay, so for Chazaras Hashatz, who says you need a minyan? Where does this concept in general of a minyan come from? So, our Makar, we have a Mishnah Megillah that brings a pasuk in the Dashti B'Seich B'nai Yisrael that a dover sheba kedusha needs a minyan. Now, most poskim understand that this pasuk is just a smachta, and the concept of minyan is only derabanan. Now, fine, a minyan, we need derabanan, we need a minyan. Who says that a minyan is 10 people? Where do we get this idea that a minyan is 10 people? So, we seemingly learned this out from a pasuk. Once again, it's a little complicated. If you understand minyan is going to be a derabanan point, how we bring the race is like a source, maybe it's also a smachna. That where do we see that minyan is 10 people? So our makar is the meraglim. The Eda, the meraglim are called the Eda. How many meraglim were there? There was 12 minus 2. Kalev and Yeshua didn't participate, so therefore that leaves us with 10. So we see that these 10 were called a minyan, were called a Eda, and Eda apparently is the connotation of a group of like a minyan. Okay, another source is when Boaz went to marry Rus, be Mekadesh Rus. So Boaz went and gathered 10 people and was Mekadesh Rus in that fashion. So that's how we got 10 people, and that's one of them. Maybe we could call that an early COVID minyan, maybe the first of its sort when we had 10 people for just the chasana. Okay, now we keep on going. So the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, Lamed Aleph Beis, asks, what's the idea? Why do we have a chazan that repeats Shemoneh Esrei? He davened already. Who needs him to daven again? What's the idea with this? What's the point? Once you did it once, who needs to do it again? So the Gemara answers that the point is to be moitzi the eina baki. Those people that didn't know how to daven by themselves, and definitely before there was the printing press, before there was siddurim around everywhere, and before there was literacy everywhere, this is pretty common that people didn't know how to daven, and that idea, we have to be moitzi those eina baki. Now, was this only needed, this idea of Chazaras Hashatz, when we had to be moitzi somebody, when there was an eina baki around, or did it also apply when even if everybody around was baki? So it seems to be that it was a takana, and if it was a takana, it applies whether or not there is a need, whether or not there's an eina baki around. Now, why do we need the takana altogether? Meaning, let's just make it when there's an eina baki around, you say Chazaras Hashatz. If there's no eina baki, you don't say Chazaras Hashatz. So the idea is that it's not simple to say that you could be moitzi somebody in tefillah with shemei ka'ina. If anybody remembers from our shiur and tefillah saderech, simply speaking, when it comes to a tefillah, one cannot be moitzi another person in a tefillah. So therefore, but once it's a takana that you say this b'tzibur, it's a tefillah tzibur. Once it's a tefillah tzibur, then it will work for everybody. The Rambam asks, why do we still need Chazaras Hashatz if L'maisa nowadays the Olam knows how we don't have the eina bakis around apparently, and if we don't have the eina bakis around, who needs it? And the Rambam answers, well, it's a takana, and you still do it. And I've heard people mention it nowadays, who needs it. Now, by the way, there's plenty of Amaratzim around, there's plenty of people that come that don't really know anything about Yiddishkeit, who come to a shul for their first time, who might not know the Halachos or the concepts of how to tefillah, of how to daven, and therefore I think there is such a basis nowadays to still need such tefillah, to have the chazan be moitzi these people. Okay, now, apparently there were those that at a point in history wanted to get rid of Chazaras Hashatz, and the Beis Yosef threatened to put them in Cherem. Now the Ben Ish Chai quotes that result that you can make up for brachas you didn't have kavana on by Chazaras Hashatz. Chazaras Hashatz has the ability to make up for you missed the bracha, we'll make it up with Chazaras Hashatz. Okay. Now, can we do Chazaras Hashatz with 6 people? I don't mean 6 davener, 6 people. All you have is 6 people in the room. Could you do Chazaras Hashatz? No! Just like when you need a kazayis, you can't do roiv kazayis. So too, when you need a minyan, you can't do roiv minyan. It will not work. Simply right. Now, what if you had a case where you had somebody wanted to do Chazaras Hashatz, and you had 10 listeners, but not all those 10 listeners daven Shemoneh Esrei together with you? Would they work for Chazaras Hashatz? Answer, yes. Why not? Why shouldn't they work for Chazaras Hashatz? And L'maisa, they taka do work for Chazaras Hashatz, not a problem. Now, what if I have 10 men, but they aren't all answering, they're not all participating? Some are schmoozing, some are davening Shemoneh Esrei, some are sleeping, some are learning, whatever exactly we want to count them to be. So we have 6 answers, and we have some other people that aren't answering. What's the deal? Could these other people, whether they're davening Shemoneh Esrei or they're schmoozing or sleeping or whatever they're doing, could they count to be part of the minyan for Chazaras Hashatz? So this is a tale of 2 Shulchan Aruchs. On one hand, we have a Shulchan Aruch in Yardea Siman Nun Hey Sif Vav, which says that if one is davening or sleeping, he can, yes, be mitzdaref to the minyan. The Mishnah Berurah explains, based on the El Yerabeh, that this was not just a leniency of one person that we're going to allow them to be sleeping, but we could even have, 4 people. As long as we have a minyan, as long as we have roiv a minyan, as long as we have 6 that are participating, either the one doing the Chazaras Hashatz or answering, as long as we have 6 participating members, it counts as a minyan. However, the Mishnah Berurah does quote as a yesh, I remember the Chai Adam says that we only allow this leniency for 1, and if there's only 6 to 8 participants, that is not good enough. You need 9 participants. The Maisa, in the Mishnah Berurah's ikar opinion seems to be that 6 would be good enough, but he does not give this as a blanket heter. He says it should only be relied upon b'shas tadchak, only when needed. There shouldn't be business as usual. Now, by the way, also just something to throw out there, the Mechaber says that the best thing l'chatchila is to wait for everybody to finish their Shemoneh Esrei. Now, if that's shayach, great. Very often it's not possible. A lot of times in our tziburs we have a big discrepancy between the fast guys and the slow guys, and if you have a very large discrepancy, it's very hard to wait for the last guy. If everybody's the same ballpark amount of time, it's a nice idea to wait for the last guy. Now, there's another Shulchan Aruch, however, on Kuf Chaf Daled, that says that if you don't have 9 people listening, Karov Hadavar Librachos Levatala. If you don't have at least 9 people listening to the Chazaras Hashatz, it's Karov Hadavar. It's close to Bracha Levatala. So all the Achronim jump up and say, Stira, what's going on? And then, hey, you said, seemingly you just need 6. Or for sure, 9's are good enough. And now coming in Kuf Haftal, you say we need 10 participants. How many participants is it? 6 or 10? What's going on? What's the deal? What's the story? Steer in the Shulchan Aruch. How could this be? Come on! 3 approaches in the Achrayim. The first approach is the approach of the Drisha. The Drisha says, Be'etzim, once you have 6 participants and 4 other people there as well, then you have roiv, a minyan is like a minyan, and that counts. You can do a davar shekledusha there. The Mishnah Berurah says, however, if you're not sure if you're going to really have 10 people that are 9 listeners, you should make it tonight. Okay. But that's the ikar. Okay, so then why in Kuf Chaf Daled are we saying that's Karva Davar LeBracha Levatala? Why is it like a Bracha Levatala? If you have a minyan, you have what you need. Huh? So it doesn't really explain the Drisha, but I think I heard this, that the idea is that since you have those, you don't have 10 people actually there who are davening. You only have 6 who are there who are actually answering. Therefore, it looks like a bracha v'atala. Since it looks like a bracha v'tala, that's why the Shulchan Aruch says kar v'davar lebracha v'tala. The Meisa, Shulchan Aruch's definitely not happy with you for doing this. Okay. Number 2, the second approach is the approach of the Magen Avram. The Magen Avram explains that the Shulchan Aruch is actually bringing two separate opinions. On one hand is the opinion of the Rosh, and Kuf Kaf Dalet is the opinion of the Rosh that Roiv doesn't work, you need a complete minyan. You need 10 participants. Whereas on Nun Hey, where the Shulchan Aruch is working with the opinion of the Maril, that says that Roiv is enough. Now, I know there's a big time gap from the Rosh and the Maril. That's just how he explains it. But Nun Hey is working with the Maril. Zak the Magen Avram with Nun Hey is working with the Maril. That says 6 is enough. And the minhag is like the Maril. The minhag is that 6 is good enough. Weiter. So the Chida, by the way, asks on the... Oh, by the way, I forgot, in the first one, the Chida actually had 2 questions. So the Chida asked in the Drisha that if it's true that it's Kar V'davar L'bracha V'tala, then why in Nun Hey is the Shulchan Aruch as presented nonchalantly, you're allowed to rely on a sleeper, one guy who's sleeping, or one guy who's davening Shema Esrei. If it's Kar V'davar, if it looks like a Bracha V'tala, if it's so geferlach, how do you present it nonchalantly in Nun Hey? That was what he asked on the Drisha. Now the Chida goes and asks on the Magen Avram. I don't get it. If the psak is like the Maril, what's your business quoting the Rosh in Kuf Chav Daled? If that's not how the Shulchan Aruch paskins, why is he bringing it down? It's obviously a very powerful question on the Magen Avram. The Chida says perhaps we could answer for the Magen Avram. The reason why we bring down the Shita of the Rosh and Kuf Chav Daled is to show that there is such a chumrah of waiting for 10. Okay, maybe. Approach number 3 to answer the stira in the Shulchan Aruch. That is the Shulchan Aruch Harav. The Shulchan Aruch Harav explains that for a davar shebekadusha, we say rubei kekuloi. And therefore 6 participants is enough to consider this a minyan for a davar shebekadusha. So when it comes for Kaddish or Kedusha or something like that, or for Shemana Esrei, this is, or let's say you have that this guy is doing Chazaras Hashatz. For him, it's his first time saying Shemana Esrei. He didn't get a chance to say it yet. That case as well, all those cases, 6 would be enough. Because for Davar Shem Kedusha, 6 is enough. However, when it comes to repeating the Shemana Esrei, why are you repeating Shemana Esrei? You already davened already. So that we said was a takana. That takana was only said b'makom tzibur. It was to have a tefillah b'tzibur. It's only said b'tzibur. You may have a minyan, but you don't have a tzibur. And the takana was you need a tzibur, and a tzibur is 10. Okay, and therefore zakt the Shulchan Aruch Harav, the Baal Tanya, zakt the Shulchan Aruch Harav, same person, that for Ma'ariv, let's say, it's going to be ganz fine, because it's just Kaddish. Kaddish, 6 people is enough. And 4 people are still davening, doesn't bother me. But for Chazaras Hashatz, there you need 10 participants. That's how he answers the stira. We're talking about different cases. The Kitzur Shulchan Aruch goes like this, and he says for Ma'ariv you can rely on 6, but for Mincha you would need 10. Okay, so where does that leave us at the end of the day? So let's think for a second. When it comes to Mincha, right, and you want to do Chazaras Hashatz, so according to the Drisha, could you start with 6? You could, but it's pretty bad. According to the Magen Avram, could you start from 6 with 6? Sure, you could. You're just missing the Chumrah of the Rosh. According to the Baal Tanya, the Shulchan Aruch Harav, could you do Chazaras Hashatz with 6? No way. Bracha levatala. What about by Ma'ariv? So by Ma'ariv, so according to everybody, you have a minyan. It's just that within the Drisha, it probably still doesn't look so good. Okay, fine. Beseder, still a Maisa, how do we end? The way that we end is that by Ma'ariv, Maisa you should wait for 10. But if you want to start with 6, it's not such a big deal. By Shachris and Mincha, you really should wait for 10, and you could only rely on 6 if it's a real Shas Hadchak. But really, you should be waiting for 10. Okay, fine. Now, an interesting thing that the Aruch HaShulchan throws in, he says, in the world, even within the world of being Mekel, you got to realize different levels. It's easier to be Mekel with somebody who's still Mil Shemana Esrei and count him as one of the 10 than somebody who's sleeping. There's different levels of who you're going to count. By the way, just to throw in there as well, some say you should wait till the Roiv is done, meaning we mean that, let's say you have 50 people who are davening there. You should wait until 26 of the people are finished Shemana Esrei before you start. Now, the Ramah says that if people daven a very long Shemana Esrei, you shouldn't wait for them, and you should just continue start Chazaras Hashatz or Kaddish without them. Rav Akiva Eger says you should always wait for the Rav, because Talmud covered for the Rav. You should always wait for the Rav. The Mishnah Berurah throws in that the Rav could be Mekel and could be Meichel, I should say, and say don't wait for me. Now, is it the correct thing? This happens very often. You have a minyan, but there's 2 chiyuvim. 2 people have yahrzeit, let's say. Could we go and split the minyan for the 2 chiyuvim? So Rav Moshe says, no, it's the wrong thing to do. You should not split the minyan. Why not? There's a concept of roiv am hadrus melech. It's better to serve a Kadosh Baruch Hu with many people in a group, a large group. And by splitting it, 2 halves do not necessarily always equal 1 whole. And therefore, you should not split the group. Also, he throws out that you often end up in these scenarios where one of the groups is diving in the hallway. The hallway doesn't have Kedusha space and Medrash, Kedusha space and Knesses. Secondly, we could put in there that in the hallway you can't put your head down for Tachnan. Once again, in Yerushalayim you might be able to. And the Siach Tefillah adds in that you often have noise coming from one room to another room, and if you have noise coming from one room to the other room interrupting each other, it also messes up the davening. So therefore, Rav Moshe says, do not split up the minyan for the 2 chiyuvim. Rav Elyashiv and Rav Shlomo Zalman, they say for kibbut of, you can split the minyan. They're not so worried about the roiv am hadrus melech. What's the ma'isa? So I would say like this. If there's enough people there, there's 40 people there, I don't know. There's enough people there where you could split it, and you'll still be able to wait for 10 people to do Kaddish or Chazaras Hashatz, then split the minyan and rely on Rav Elyashiv and Rav Shlomo Zalman. But if by splitting the minyan you're going to lose the roiv am, and in addition to that, you're going to make it that they're going to be very b'diavad. You're going to start Chazaras Hashatz with 6 people because you only have 12 in each minyan. Then I would say you should want to stay away from such a split. But obviously there may be emotions and etc. involved in each case, so each case needs to be viewed independently. But I would say that as a general guideline. Okay. How about starting a minyan with 10 people, but only 6 of the people are daveners? 4 people davened already. Yeah, I'll be mitzvah to your minyan. Does that work? So we're going to see something interesting. The modern poskim were not very happy with this. Rav Moshe Feinstein wasn't happy with this. Rav Chaim wasn't happy with this. The Brisker Rav wasn't happy with this. The Chazon Ish didn't like it. The Stapler didn't like it. Rav Shlomo Zalman didn't like it. They all say it doesn't work. We have maybe 10 for Chazaras Hashatz apparently, but not for a minyan. For a minyan, Tefillah b'tzibur, you need a tzibur, and 10 people where 6 are davening isn't good enough. However, the Chalkas Yaakov, the Kinyan Torah, the B'sal Chachma, the Tilas David, and the Minchas Yitzchak all say that you could have 6 daveners and 4 people joining in. And that's the minhag. Apparently, it seems from multiple sources that the minhag has been historically in Klal Yisrael that we did rely on having 6 daveners. Okay. Now, Lamaisa, so could you do it or no? So Lamaisa, it's pretty b'diavad to do the 6 davener thing, but apparently it was the minhag, and if apparently it was the minhag, you can't tell people not to do it, because apparently it was the minhag, and I believe it still is the minhag. I think people do it. So therefore, if it's a minhag, it's a minhag, and whatever, I guess it could be done, but you have to realize it's pretty b'diavad. Now, Rosh Hashanah says even if you hold that you can't do this and you hold that you need 10 proper, if there's a minyan that's trying to put together, you're one of the 6 people that they're counting on to make their minyan, don't be too firm to daven with them. You should rely on their 6 as being part of a minyan, even though Rav Shlomo Zalman himself was somebody that didn't hold of it, but he said, even if you don't hold of it, but you have to help out a minyan. You can't leave them hanging. And he said, even if this happens often, you cannot leave them behind. Something interesting to point out, the Chassam Sofer says that 6 isn't good enough, but 7 is. You need 7, not just 6. And his Makar, I think, is based on benching. Benching, you need 7 bread eaters to bench with a minyan. So he says you need 7 daveners. The Rabaz says you need 7 for one of these minyanim because you need the kol nicker, which I think what that means is the sound needs to be recognizable. It has to sound like a minyan. Maybe it's because, remember we said with the Drisha, it needs to at least look like it's Sibur. Maybe it needs to at least sound like it's Sibur. If you have to have a good amount of people to make the sound loud enough. Fine. Now, if you had a minyan for Chazaras Hashatz and some of the minyan left in the middle, they had to go. It's obviously a bad thing to go, but let's say they had to go. So then the Maisa you're allowed to finish without them. Now, fine. Another interesting point, the Magen Avram holds that you need to have a minyan not just for Kaddish, but whatever the Kaddish is going on. So let's say you have a Kaddish going on the Ashrei beforehand. To start Ashrei, you need a minyan already to start the Ashrei. You can't start Ashrei with 9 because you see the old man's walking down the block and he's going to be there within 3 minutes. So let's just start Ashrei now. No, you have to wait until the old man gets inside and then you start Ashrei. And similarly by Karbanos. Oh, the 10th is here, Kaddish. No, you should finish off the end of Karbanos and then you say Kaddish. Or it's going on something like Chanani Menakash Oimer. Everybody hear that? Great. And then do Kaddish. They should hear what Kaddish is going on. However, the Taz says you could have 10 for Kaddish by itself. That is good enough. Okay, next question. Oh, the Mishnah Berurah, by the way, says that one should be machmir for the Magen Avram. Now, does one need to stand for Chazaras Hashatz? So the Ramah says one should stand for Chazaras Hashatz. You ever notice that in these Sephardi places they're all sitting for Chazaras Hashatz? Yeah, because I said the Ramah, not the Shulchan Aruch. So Sephardim are machmir for this, but the Ashkenazim are, you should be standing for Chazaras Hashatz. The Aruch HaShulchan says Yer Shemayim should stand. The Gra says Al Pi Kabbalah you should stand. The Halachos Ketanas points out that if you're weak, you could sit, don't worry about it. Now, the Shulchan Aruch says you should be mechaven to Chazaras Hashatz. Now the Mishnah Berurah says that you shouldn't learn during Chazaras Hashatz. Now why not? What's wrong with learning during Chazaras Hashatz? Torah! Aren't we always so into Torah? So he gives 2 reasons. One reason is that you won't be paying enough attention. Yeah, obviously he understands it's not choshesh that you're not going to be answering. You're going to be answering, but answering while you're learning. However, when you're answering to Chazaras Hashatz while you're learning, you might say Amen Yisoyim. You might say a cut off Amen. You might say Amen improperly. And if you say Amen improperly, that's bad news. And therefore, you can't be learning because you're going to mess up your Amens. Reason number 2 is, yes, you're a grace tzaddik, you'll learn. But you know the message you're giving? You're maybe a chates or rabbim, because you're sending a message out to everybody. They're going to see you learning and not listening to Chazaras Hashatz, and they're going to shmooze. It's not important, Chazaras Hashatz. You see, Tam Chacham over here isn't listening, he's learning, so they're going to be talking. And therefore, you should not learn during Chazaras Hashatz. Okay, next. The Shulchan Aruch says that if you're doing let's say you're at a point, a couple minutes before the Zman Tefillah, a couple minutes before Shkia, etc. Say Zman Tefillah, I'm referring to. A couple minutes before Shkia, let's say. So, if you daven regular Shema or regular Chazaras Hashatz, you're going to miss the Zman. What to do? So what you should do is something called the Heichi Kedusha. What's the Heichi Kedusha? Or what do they call it? Chazaras Hashatz K'tzara. I think that's what they call it in Israel. Heichi Kedusha. What's a Heichi Kedusha? So, the Chazan starts with Shemoneh Esrei out loud, until you get to Kedusha, and then he has Kedusha, and after Kedusha, everybody starts their Shemoneh Esrei. And then there's no Chazaras Hashatz at the end, a Hechi Kedusha. That's what you should do, because that's all you can get in. Something interesting that Reb Chaim points out, it's a question, is the Chazan Yoitza Tefillah B'Tzibur? Because he started his Shemoneh Esrei before the rest of the Tzibur did. So Zot Reb Chaim, yes, he is Yoitza. Because he says that Misvara, if he's the one who's leading the klal in their davening, he has to be Yoitza Tefillah B'Tzibur. Okay, now as many know, Rabbi Aaron Kotler instituted in Lakewood Yeshiva that by Mincha they do Hechi Kedusha. Standard, not when they're short in time. Every day they do Hechi Kedusha. The question is why? I mean, some people are very upset with this Hechi Kedusha. There's a lot of issues with the Hechi Kedusha. Number one, the Chazan is doing his Shemoneh Esrei out loud. You're not supposed to do your private Shemoneh Esrei out loud. Number two, the tzibur is going to be missing all these amains. Number three, there's a rule that what does the Chazan daven first before he does his Chazaras Hashatz? He's supposed to be Mesader the Shemoneh Esrei B'Piv. He's supposed to make sure he has everything clear. Before over here, he just went up and started Chazaras Hashatz without getting everything clear. Number four, we're missing the advantages of the Arizal. I don't know if I pointed this out earlier. Maybe I forgot it. But the Arizal says we have tremendous advantages by Chazaras Hashatz, the things that you didn't have kavana on, in Chazaras Hashatz, that could count for your brachas with the kavana. So it's a tremendous chus to have a Chazaras Hashatz. You're missing that. So how could Aaron Kotler say, do this Hechi Kedusha in yeshivas? And by the way, it might have started off with only Rav Aaron Kotler, but definitely in America, many yeshivas do Hechi Kedusha as part of their daily schedule by Mincha, right before they start Second Seder, Hechi Kedusha. How could they do that? So, some want to explain, Bittul Torah. Torah, the Chashivas of Torah. And therefore we don't have time to daven. And we do Hechi Kedusha because it's quicker. Now, I find that argument to be very difficult to understand. It doesn't make so much sense to me. We know there's a concept of Limod Almanas Laslos. You're supposed to learn to be able to know how to live your life properly. You're supposed to keep your mitzvahs correctly. And we don't take off from doing mitzvahs properly to learn. You're supposed to do your mitzvahs properly. So it's a little bit hard to understand. I heard a pshat from the B'Shem Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky that he explained, what was the Iker Takana? The Iker Takana was, you say, Chazaras Hashatz in a base Knesses, so that the Amma Arts, the Eina Baki, they'll be able to, you can be moitz them in Shemoneh Esrei. The Eina Baki needs somebody to be moitz them. So in a base Knesses, which has Eina Baki, we're masakin that you need Chazaras Hashatz. But however, in a base Medrash of a yeshiva, which is not a place for Eina Baki, this is a place that Kulam B'Kiyim, Kulam Yoidim Esatayra, yeah? So in a place where Kulam B'Kiyim, like a base Knesset, like a base Medrash of a yeshiva, a separate type of place, there the Takana wasn't really said. Once again, nobody's saying that it's wrong to say Chazaras Hashatz, but it's debatable at least whether the Gezerah was the Takana was ever really said in the base Medrash of a yeshiva, and therefore, since it's a place where it's debatable whether the Takana was ever really said, Memela, now we could start making a cheshbon the value of Torah, because it's not so pashut that we need Chazaras Hashatz anyways. Once it's not pashut that we need Chazaras Hashatz anyways, Memela will rely on the fact that the value of Torah is so important, and therefore we don't necessarily need the full Chazaras Hashatz. Thank you for listening.